17 times every single day, without exception. Your lips move through the same 7 verses. Each prayer you have ever offered opened with these same words. Without them, the prayer itself stands nullified, rendered spiritually void. The Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him, designated it the supreme chapter of the entire Quran, the 7 ceaselessly repeated verses, the grand opening of the sacred book, and yet generation after generation of believers has moved their tongues across these words for entire lifetimes, while never once penetrating what those words are genuinely communicating. Ibn Arabi gave 4 complete decades to decoding the concealed architecture of this single surah. What emerged from that lifetime of contemplation was so seismically profound that he recorded how it permanently restructured his understanding of reality, of worship, and of the living bond between the finite human soul and the infinite divine. His declaration was unequivocal: genuinely comprehend even a single verse of Fatiha the way it demands to be comprehended, and the person standing after that understanding will be irrevocably different from the person who stood before it. Grasp all 7 verses as they were cosmically intended, and you will have absorbed the totality of the Quran, because every other verse across the entire book is merely an elaboration of what Fatiha carries in its compressed and concentrated form. What follows is not the grammatical dissection you encountered in classrooms, nor the recitation virtues you absorbed from Friday's sermons. It is the metaphysical blueprint, buried in plain and open sight, the hidden scaffolding that, once perceived, transforms every salah you will ever perform into an entirely different event. Ibn Arabi's foundational discovery was that Fatiha is not a monologue delivered toward the heavens. It is a bilateral conversation, a living dialogue between the servant and the Lord. The sacred Hadith Qudsi ratifies this precisely. Allah declares that He has divided the prayer between Himself and His servant into 2 equal portions, that the first half belongs to Him, the second to the servant, and that the servant shall receive whatever he petitions. Ibn Arabi mapped the exact location of that division and articulated why the placement carries such staggering weight. The opening 3 verses belong entirely to Allah. When you utter Alhamdulillah, you are not directing speech toward Allah. You are speaking about Him. You are recognizing His nature, naming His reality, acknowledging what He is and what He perpetually does. These verses do not constitute a request or a plea. They constitute the establishment of truth itself, the architect of existence, made verbally explicit. Ibn Arabi designated this phase the cosmic orientation. Before any petition can be formed, before any longing can be voiced, the servant must first anchor themselves in absolute reality. You must recall, with full interior attention, who Allah is and precisely who you are in relationship to Him. Without that anchoring, everything that follows becomes liturgical noise rather than conscious encounter. The 4th verse occupies the exact center, the sovereign hinge upon which the entire surah pivots. Iyyaka na'budu wa iyyaka nasta'in. You alone we worship, and you alone we seek as our aid. This is the precise juncture where the divine and the human intersect, the threshold where transcendence and creaturely dependence meet face to face. Ibn Arabi taught that this singular verse compresses the entire purpose of human existence into 9 Arabic words. Everything preceding it accumulates toward this moment. Everything following it flows downstream from it. The servant in this verse makes a dual declaration that is simultaneously an act of orientation and an act of confession, total turning toward Allah and total acknowledgement of absolute dependence upon Him. Notice that for the first time in Fatiha the pronoun shifts. The opening verse is addressed to Allah in the 3rd person. He is this, He governs that. Now suddenly the posture changes. You. The address becomes intimate, direct, face to face. Ibn Arabi called this the moment of unveiled nearness. After having oriented the entire self toward divine reality through the opening verses, the servant now turns their gaze fully upon Allah and speaks directly to Him. The weight of that transition, from speaking about to speaking to, is not grammatical convenience. It is the structural representation of the soul's movement, from description into presence, from theological acknowledgement into living encounter. And in the second half of the verse, the confession deepens further still. I recognize that I am owned. I profess that my entire function is to worship you alone. And in the same breath, I must confess the devastating paradox. I cannot fulfill this purpose without you granting me the capacity to fulfill it. You are the object of worship, and simultaneously the enabler of worship. This verse, Ibn Arabi declared, dismantles spiritual pride at its deepest root. You cannot boast about your devotion, because your devotion only exists through divine permission. You cannot consider yourself superior to those who do not worship, because if Allah withdrew His enabling grace from you this very instant, you would be indistinguishable from them. The closing 3 verses belong to the servant. Guide us to the straight path, the path of those upon whom you have bestowed your favor, not those who drew your wrath, nor those who wandered into loss. Here the petition begins. But observe with precision what is being requested. Not abundance, not recovery from illness, not worldly ascent or social triumph. The single petition is for guidance. Ibn Arabi asked, why guidance eclipses all other human needs as the one thing the servant asks for when standing in the most sacred exchange available to a human being. His response illuminated something radical, because guidance is the most comprehensive need in existence. Every other affliction, poverty, confusion, loneliness, illness, fear, traces its ultimate origin to being off the path. When you are genuinely walking the straight path, even your hardships become navigational instruments. Even your losses become reorientation points. But when you are displaced from the path, even your blessings become instruments of further deviation. Even your successes accelerate your distance from where you need to be. He further analyzed the grammar of the supplication with characteristic precision. The verse says, guide us to the straight path, not guide us on it. This distinction is not incidental. It is structural revelation. You are not asking Allah to guide you while you're already walking the right road. You are confessing that you cannot even locate the road without His direct intervention. You need Him to take you by the hand, lift you from wherever you are standing, and place you upon it. And the verb ihina carries continuous present tense force. Not guide us once, but keep guiding us, step by step, moment by moment, choice by choice. Yesterday's guidance does not immunize you from today's deviation. Each new step presents new possibilities of going wrong, which is precisely why you return to this supplication a minimum of 17 times in every single day. The final verse completes the architecture through negation, clarifying what the straight path is by defining what it is not, from 2 opposing directions. 3 categories of people emerge: those whom Allah has blessed with complete guidance and who followed it completely, those who possessed knowledge of truth but rejected it through arrogance or appetite, and those who acted with passion and sincerity but without wisdom or knowledge to direct that passion correctly. Ibn Arabi identified in these 3 categories the entire spectrum of human spiritual failure and its one narrow corrective. The path of those who earned wrath represents knowledge divorced from transformation, the condition of one who has studied extensively, who can articulate theology with precision, who has memorized volumes, and whose heart has remained entirely untouched by any of it. The path of those who went astray represents devotion divorced from discernment, the condition of one who worships with tremendous energy and sincerity, whose passion for the divine is genuine and burning, but whose worship is not anchored in what Allah actually intends, and whose emotional intensity carries them further from alignment rather than toward it. The straight path, Ibn Arabi declared, navigates between these two abysses. It is the integration of knowledge that descends from the head into the heart and transforms into action, and devotion that rises from the heart and is shaped and directed by wisdom. Neither the head alone nor the heart alone constitutes the path. Only their living synthesis produces the road that leads directly, with minimum detour, between where the soul presently stands and where the soul ultimately belongs. Ibn Arabi spent 4 decades with Surah Fatiha and testified that even that was insufficient to exhaust its depths. What has been shared here is not his complete teaching that would require volumes upon volumes. It is only sufficient to permanently alter how you hear these 7 verses the next time you rise for salat. Stand. Recite slower than you have ever recited. Pause between verses. Allow the meaning to descend from cognition into feeling. Notice whether you truly mean the words leaving your lips, or whether they are merely the familiar sound of ritual departure. The verses have remained unchanged across 14 centuries. You, however, can still change in relation to them. And that change, even incremental, even subtle, is the entire point.